we'll cover is I'll tell you briefly just what the DESERA Group is and does. We'll talk about planning, cross-cultural applications, one very, very important aspect of it, why one wants to really work harder than normal on relationships once you go offshore, how time on the ground is important, some tips upon investing in your partners and assessing them, just how to select support personnel, the role of training and development and how important it is, why one wants to immediately begin once you enter in any kind of a business relationship with an offshore partner, and that could be whether you're buying a company, whether you're starting one, whether it's a joint venture or just a supplier-supplying relationship, why it's important to begin the continuous improvement process immediately. We'll talk about another problem that's not a problem today. It was a problem, and as the world economy turns around, it will become a problem again. So it's a problem that's on the horizon. And we'll talk about a little bit about what happens when and how to handle problems when they recur at very remote sites, and then talk about another program that the DESERA Group offers where we can secure government grants and actually get the government to pay anywhere from 50 to 100% of the cost of additional training and possibly consulting. Okay, here are some of the things that the DESERA Group does. I'm sure you went on our website when you registered for this, and you did see some of the things that we do. But as far as relative to this particular subject, the items in the red, the cross-cultural training, supplier selection and improvement. We work on operational improvement, offshore facility assessments, and I'll talk about just what they are in the future. We help with sourcing and partnering selection, and also technology transfer. Okay, as far as the grants, there is money available from a lot of municipalities. All the 50 states, including Puerto Rico, has money available for stimulus money available to help companies grow and compete. And also the federal government has programs. And we have all the necessary knowledge to help you apply for these grants and help you administer the funds once you receive them. So if you're interested in any other additional services, please don't hesitate to call us. You can either call me or you can call the general number. Okay, as far as myself, I've been around a while. I've been doing work in the quality area and supplier work for just about all of my career. And since 1995, I've been working a lot in offshore locations. I've done work in Europe, extensive work in Asia and Latin America, and it all had to do with supplier development, supplier improvement, quality improvement, cost performance improvement, and also schedule improvement. And I've been doing this work. I spend a lot of time overseas. Last year I made 7 trips to Asia, 3 to Latin America, and 2 to Europe doing this type of work. The year before, it was actually more. In 2008, I spent about 190 days out of the country working. So I do get around, and I have been doing this work for a long time. And most of this is based on my extensive experience in doing this work. Okay, as far as outsourcing, what I find in most cases, and again in every country, in every region, there's a spectrum of companies, some that have excellent quality systems, some that have poor quality systems. But if you compare the companies in low-cost areas, the distribution is shifted more towards the poor end, although I have been seeing some improvement the past few years in both Latin America and Asia. But basically, most of them are inspection-based. They deal with rework and replace, and that doesn't have to be product. It could be services or software. I've worked in those areas and see a lot of unnecessary rework and replace. I've been at factories where they have more people doing rework than building the initial product. Their quality assurance programs tend to be poor. Most that have an ISO 9001 certificate really don't have a good system, although recently, the year before last, I did see a company in China that had an excellent system that was applied, and they were following not the letter of ISO 9001. They were following the actual intent, which was good. But they were an exception. They have poor, ineffective quality improvement programs, and the way that they manage their subcontracts and suppliers are very, very poor. In fact, one of the dangers that one needs to be concerned about when you go offshore to any low-cost region is the probability if the company gets busy that they're going to send the work to another facility and subcontract it out. And once you go through all the trouble of qualifying and getting a product or a service to the point where you need it to be, it's qualified, once it's moved to another facility, that is a major process change, and that's something that you need to be concerned about, that the work isn't moved or subcontracted out. And I see with the world getting busy again that this year that situation is probably going to negatively affect a lot of companies out there. It has affected me in the past. Okay, the first step with any endeavor is the planning. And what I'd like to recommend here is that individuals that are involved or responsible for operations overseas, no matter what your responsibility is, it doesn't necessarily have to be just the quality function, is look at their system maturity. If you're dealing with quality, look at the company and try to decide where they are in the quality continuum. If they're inspection-based, if they have a good corrective action system, or if they're even getting close to a Malcolm Baldrige Award criteria or maturity there, to take that into effect. Another thing one needs to take into effect is the language and communication ability. When you're planning these operations, it's important that you assess that, because the less of their ability to communicate in whatever language that you need them to communicate. I suspect most people, their prime language on this call is English, that they communicate well in English. If they cannot, things are going to take longer. If you need to work through interpreters and translators, that tends to cause problems, especially if those people are not technical. I've run into a lot of problems where I had to work through salespeople who could not understand and comprehend technical items, and it's hard enough to interpret and translate technical ideas, but when you don't understand it, it's almost impossible. Another important thing we're going to talk about is taking into account the culture, also where they are as far as necessary knowledge relative to the technology that they're doing, also relative to their the quality tools and techniques and quality system understanding those gaps, because that has to be part of the planning to actually supplement that and actually bring them up to a point where they're able to operate per your expectations. Another thing is time on the ground needs. I notice a lot of companies, and we'll talk about this a little later, that companies don't plan for enough time on the ground to work with these partners, and it's very, very necessary, and there'll be more coming in the future. Also, necessary budget for all of this travel, which is necessary, allotting people's time to travel. A lot of times the estimates for budget and travel is very much understated, and all of a sudden there's a need for more time on the ground, more trips, and it causes problems because either people aren't available or budget's not available, and then in the long term, I find that a lot of companies that I've worked with, they pay for not spending that money later on. Another one is that those involved in a particular offshore situation or business involvement. If it's in Asia, then it's off-hour phone calls that need to be planned. People will have to. There's no other way to operate in a situation without calling these individuals in Asia, and it means very, very early phone calls, early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, or after dinner, being on the phone with these individuals when they're working. China, again, right now from the Eastern time zone is 13 hours ahead of us. So right now, people that you're dealing with, if there's an issue, calling them, even if you call them at home, they will be currently sleeping and probably not available to speak, or they wouldn't appreciate being disturbed. Okay. One of the most important things, if you go away from this particular event with nothing else other than an appreciation and a feeling that you need to understand the culture. The world is full of different and wonderful cultures, and I recommend that people really try to engage the culture, try to get some training in it, develop yourself, understand the culture. What I almost beg clients to do if they cannot, they really don't have budget for me for any extensive work, that if they could only afford one day is to get me in there and have me do a one-day cross-cultural training program and get all personnel involved to get that cross-cultural training. There's nothing more. There's not a better investment that I can think of. Also, if you're interested in additional information relative to different cultures of the world, I have another session scheduled for next Wednesday, I believe at the exact same time as this, where I will be talking about culture, and you're welcome to go on a DeSera site and sign up for that. That is a brand new webinar that we're offering. It's also important just to learn some language basics. If you meet people, and I'm going to talk about relationships in a few minutes, that once you meet people, if it's a Chinese person and you shake hands, and if you say ni hao, you usually get a very, very positive experience. You'll get in a culture that doesn't show emotion very nicely, a nice smile on their face. So it's important just to learn a few phrases. Also in Latin America, by saying mucho gusto is another very, very important thing. So wherever you're doing business, I recommend, and I have it as part of my training, just to learn a few basic phrases in that particular language. Again, I can't say it enough. Take this one serious, and I've noticed a lot of organizations overlook this and really don't feel that it's important. And in my career, it has worked wonders for me. When I first started going to Latin America and actually traveling throughout the world in the early 1990s, I was able to get some improvement with the supply bases. But once I really engaged the culture and learned the culture and worked at learning it and taught myself things about the culture, it worked wonders for me, and I was able to get even more improvements from these suppliers and these actual and other business partners than I ever expected. Okay, let's talk about relationships and versus contracts. Again, us North Americans and Europeans, we are very legalistic in nature. In the United States, we have more lawyers per capita than in any other country in the world, and therefore we are very legalistic, and we approach business arrangements from a contract standpoint. Normally, most individuals, and how I have operated in the past and up to the point of me going overseas, was that what was in the contract governed. The contract governed how projects were run. Relationships weren't as important as the contracts, and a lot of time was spent in spelling out details in the contract. In low-cost regions, it's somewhat the opposite. Contracts are there. Everyone knows that they need to execute a contract, but in a lot of these regions, a contract is considered just a formality. It is followed if possible. If not, there's a lot of flexibility relative to following a contract or not. Some people, especially in China, consider a contract a guide, not the letter of the law, and we don't. And they really deal with relationships. And my recommendation here is that you really work hard on getting people, on developing relationships with whoever your counterparts are in any of these regions. In China, they have a term in Mandarin called guanxi, and that's basically somebody's relationship ability and how many relationships they have and how good it is. And it's very, very important to them. So they are looking at having a good relationship with you, and more things are done based on relationships. So my recommendation here is invest the time in it, develop trust with individuals, and it's much more important relationships in other parts of the world than it is in the part of the world that we live in it. Okay, the next item is time on the ground. I see so many of companies that I help not really understanding the need to spend time on the ground at these particular facilities that you're doing business with. And again, it could be a major supplier, it could be a joint venture, it could be your own company, or any of the above. And it's really important to spend the time on the ground, and that's one way to build your relationship with these people. What I recommend is that unless you're somebody, a high-level manager, but if you're really responsible for the particular operation, to avoid what I like to call Seagull Visits. And they're visits where people fly in, dump all over the particular facility, and fly out the next day or two. You really need to have adequate duration at these facilities in order to make an impact. And until I started doing that in my past life as an executive for a Fortune 500 company, I wasn't getting the results that I got. Also, in these third world countries, the workers expect more involvement from high-level individuals. You will find that even the CEO is out on a production floor more, is out in the area where the product is being produced, whether it's software, whether it's a call center or a service area. It doesn't have to be a manufacturing facility. And they are heavily involved. So these workers expect that involvement. It's a little different in these regions than it is in the Western world. So this time needs to be planned. You need to plan the budget. And what I find is companies that don't do this tend to pay the price further down the road where there's problems, and in order to, it's much cheaper to prevent a problem in most cases than to fix it. And I've seen it time and time again, and I've seen situations where I had to be called in to repair or improve a situation where I probably could have spent less time if I was called in at the beginning in order to prevent it. So very, very important. Make sure that you plan and you spend adequate time on the ground. Most of the time when I would go on overseas trips, when I was part of the corporate world, I would go for a minimum of 3 weeks. I would just go and stay there, and sometimes it would be up to 5 weeks. And that was the only way that I was going to get the results that the company I work for required of me. Okay, the next item is developing your partners. It's a little controversial. You know, anytime that a company would want to invest money and develop another facility, you could get some resistance from other parts of your management team. However, if it's your partner, if it's a joint venture, there shouldn't be any issue. Sometimes helping suppliers becomes a bit of an area of discussion and controversial. You know, why should you help a supplier improve their quality system so they produce better quality? that they reduce costs and also that they increase their on-time delivery if they're only going to help other individuals. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the only option for success. There's a lot of other benefits to helping a particular supplier improve. They will feel they owe you. I've found that suppliers actually give you priority if you will invest in it. It is not forgotten. And later on, I'll give you some examples of that. So I recommend that you do look at what these partners need as far as training, local, foreign, and even what I've done in the past is had my organization that I was representing, whether it was as a consultant or when I was working for an organization, pay for part of this development efforts, where we would actually at the beginning I was paying for it, and then towards the end we would split the cost of it, and it worked very well. It helped our suppliers. It helped us. It reduced their costs. We were able to use that during negotiations the past year by demonstrating that we helped them reduce their costs, and we got actually lower prices as a result of it. And the development is training, and then what really works is on-site assistance after the initial training, some training reinforcement, and helping them plan to implement items like this. And some of the tools could be as simple as SPC. It could be some of the Six Sigma tools. It could be failure modes and effects analysis. But items like that I found really helps the situation. As far as making this investment and return on investment, I also recommend that if a company can't afford some capital equipment, by helping them do that may be to your benefit. I'll give you an example. I was working for a while back for a small metals manufacturer, and the company was going through some financial difficulties for a period of time, and we had one customer that wanted some additional testing done. I did not have the test equipment to do it, and I mentioned to them, it says, I will ask for it, but boy, oh boy, I don't know if the company can afford it right now. And they says, that's okay. If you need it, we will buy it for you, and all we ask you to do is keep it maintained, repair it if it breaks, keep it calibrated, put it in your calibration system. You're responsible for calibration, and give us priority. You can even use it for your other customers. Just give us first priority. And they bought us a piece of test equipment. I think it was a density checker, and that got around to the company. And I find that the workers, because it made their job easier by having density checked automatically, that we had another method to do it, which was not accurate and very time-consuming, that they would give this company priority. People would drop what they were doing to make sure that the shipments for this particular customer got out on time. The inspection group would give a priority and double-check to make sure it was right, and this company got back that investment, I think, in multiple factors. So that could be in capital equipment, invest in training and development, and part of it is actually doing a gap assessment, determining what equipment and or training the individual organization needs, and then progressively planning it out and implementing it. And all the major suppliers that I've worked with, that system works very well. And I've proven it many, many times that it does have a positive effect on the bottom line. It's been demonstrated. There's been a lot written on it, and my personal experience, it has shown that it has paid off. It's a worthwhile investment, and if anybody needs to, I can help individuals justify that particular thing. And some of the gains here you'll see that I was able to accomplish by implementing some of these techniques that I'm speaking about now. Okay, assessment and control. What I recommend that any major supplier or joint venture situation that there's a joint comprehensive evaluation of facilities and systems. And I will talk about what I mean by joint on the next slide. But basically looking at the operations and the quality system. Now, most companies that I dealt with, they have systems where they'll send somebody in, and the quality system will be evaluated, the operational system will be evaluated, and in most cases they don't go any further. But what you need to be concerned about over and above this is looking at the social compliance situation, especially if you have a name to protect. There was a major footwear manufacturer in the early 90s where they were buying from a supplier in South China. They were making athletic footwear, and the news media came in and found child labor. They found that the canteen people were not getting protein only 3 times a week. There were horrendous living conditions in the dormitories, and there were some other issues, safety issues. They were using, I believe, prison and forced labor, and this hit the newspapers in the West, and this company lost a big percent of their marketing share, their market share, and it took them, they reported, it took them 9 years to get most of that market share back. So if you're interested in protecting your name, you want to look at the social compliance at these particular facilities. Looking at their accounting systems is important. A lot of times in low-cost regions, especially in East Asia, I find that some companies have poor accounting systems, and in a country like China, the university system is producing a lot of graduates in technology, but accounting and finance is not considered, people don't aspire to that, so there's a shortage of accountants. Therefore, the accounting systems are poor, and there's been companies that I've looked at that I wasn't sure if they knew whether they were making money or not, and it's really dangerous getting involved with a company that might be making too much profit and don't realize it, or is actually losing money. That's only going to cause issues for you in the future if it is. So it's good to take a look at their accounting system. And what I would do is if I felt that there were some issues with their accounting system, I would usually go back to the headquarters of the company and have somebody else more competent to come in and actually go over their books. It's real important. Another thing is looking at their capacity and planning. What I find when I talk to people back in the 1990s, I would speak to people in the early, up to about 2002, 2003. I would ask what the #1 problem is for companies that were getting product from Asia, and they would say quality. And then all of a sudden it started to move away as quality got somewhat better, that late deliveries were the #1 problem. And there's been a number of surveys done since then to support that. And it's a situation where a lot of times companies don't do enough capacity and planning. They run out of raw materials, and therefore that causes late shipments. So looking at their capacity and planning, looking at safety, I can tell you so many stories about safety violations that I've seen at companies. One was where a company had fire extinguishers where I told them to buy them, and then they put empty cans there. The owner didn't realize that he had to fill them with something. And there again, you don't want a critical supplier facility to burn down and not have them have the ability to fight a fire, and then you're going to be in trouble as far as getting a source for whatever you're purchasing from them, whether it's services and or product. And also their supplier management system is another weakness I mentioned before. And what I recommend here is, when I said joint, is get a Westerner with offshore experience to go with somebody from your organization, so so they can be trained in all of these items and some other areas that you may want to look at. And I find that people from the quality department are best suited to do this because they really, about most of these items, there's a few where where they need to be educated slightly, but by giving them the assistance, that I find that the quality department are best suited for these type of audits. And then once these items are looked at, and if the decision is made to yes, go forward with doing business with this company, is to early on, before a purchase order is let, to work on an improvement plan, and to actually have a plan with dates, with the schedule, a complete plan for overcoming some of the shortcomings, and that's contingent upon them committing to it prior to issuing any purchase orders. And if it's after the fact, then again urging them that a lot of times future business is contingent upon these items being addressed satisfactorily. Assessment and control. What I find is in these third world countries, just about all of them, and I'm talking both Latin America and Asia, is there's a big reluctance to report bad news. They just, is part of their culture, where the word no or any bad news, and this is even more severe in Asia, but it does exist in some Latin American countries, where they do not want to report bad news. So what I find happening is companies will get into trouble. They can't deliver on time. They ran out of raw materials. They're having technical problems. Rather than, because their culture says you don't say no, you don't report bad news, say nothing, and all of a sudden you're ready to receive product or receive a deliverable on a service, and it's not ready. And then when one requires it, say, oh, we had this problem, we ran out of raw material, you know, it's being made now, we're going to ship it now. But the advance notice isn't there. Where on our side of the world, you know, if there's issues, normally the customer is told ahead of time, this is the situation, and this is what we're doing about it, and possibly the customer can help them. So you need to work. That's another reason why working on a relationships is very, very important. And again, when they do report any bad news, reinforce that behavior, thank them so much, and be involved in helping them. What you want to do is never react negatively, because if you do that, they're going to think you're not accepting them, you're not liking them, and they have a strong need to have a good relationship with you. So you need to remain positive, you need to thank them, and then you need to do what you can do to help them. And normally, once the situation happens, I find that it'll improve drastically over time. Okay, it's also important to make sure that these organizations are frequently communicating and reporting the status of items. If it's building something, where the raw materials are, how much raw materials, what your production is for that day, how much you expect to be out, any problems, what was accomplished. It's much more important to monitor these remote facilities than it is for domestic suppliers. Okay. Here's another area, and an area where I was I've gotten burnt in the past by putting the wrong person in. What normally happens is once it's established that a company is in need of some type of managerial or technical expertise to be overseas to help a particular business partner get started, they usually look at the most senior or the best qualified from a technical standpoint person to put there. And I've done it once where I did that, and this person didn't work out, and it cost the company a lot of money. But what I strongly recommend here is to look at not only the technical expertise, but look at two other factors. One factor is the attitude and the person's aptitude for training and development. Not everybody has the patience, has the ability, has the personality or the desire to do training and development. I do. I'm somebody who loves to develop organizations and people. That's why I became a consultant a while back. And I enjoy that, but I know some other people do not. Another thing to worry about, to be concerned about with people, is try to assess their attitude. A lot of individuals have a negative attitude that jobs are being sent overseas, and even if they realize that they must help the company for various reasons, sometimes subconsciously they will work against it. So those are two items you really need to be concerned about. And I think the attitude and somebody's ability to and desire to train and develop is more important than the technical skills. And even if you have to trade off somebody with somewhat less technical skills, if they have the right other items, they are a better person to use. So be careful. Just don't automatically assume that the best technical person is the best fit for that particular work. Also another thing is let people know the travel expectations. Be honest with them. A lot of companies will say, even if they think they have to spend 20% of their time overseas, they'll say only 10, and then it becomes a problem. You're better off telling them this is the range, it could be this much, and letting them understand it up front before you start with somebody, and after that they really can't handle the amount of time that they spend overseas, and it could be for a lot of reasons. It could be personal reasons, it could be that they have young children, it could be that they have to care for somebody in their particular household, and they can't be away that long, but you need to have that that discussion and be honest up front. And also, if you're dealing with Asia, again, these evening phone calls, people have to realize that that will become part of their job, early morning or evening phone calls. And somebody like me who has all of their children out of the house and finished college, it's not a real issue, but it would have been a problem early in my career when I had 3 children at home and I had other things to do at night, when I had to be on the phone for 4 out of 7 nights a week. It probably wouldn't have fit with my personal lifestyle at that time. So you need to let people know this is what is going to come with this new assignment. As far as training and development, I really can't push more for an active training program, and that as soon as you get involved with another organization, whatever training that is needed due to various assessments you make, that you start developing it from the beginning. Again, high-level personnel involvement in it and support is very, very important. Spend time convincing the management of that particular organization that it's needed, that it's necessary, that they don't just go through the motions just to satisfy you, that it's something that is going to help them and also help their organizations. And what I recommend is training and development, and also helping them with on-site assistance, just by giving them some information and sending them to training and saying, go ahead and do it. In my experience, doesn't work. You need some assistance to make sure that it gets embedded in the organization. Another thing is the professional group is to offer them some career advancement. That will also help with the revolving door syndrome that we'll talk about very shortly. It's good to do that, and also for real key people, especially in these third world countries where these people cannot, even at professional salaries, they're much lower than we are here. International travel is probably something that they would never be able to afford. By offering them occasional trips to North America or Europe to the West, where they can get some training and get to see other parts of the world, is I find very, very motivational, and it helps with retention. And once you're working with these people and developing them, what you don't want to see is another company coming in and hiring them away from you, and then you have to do everything all over again and spend the money also. As far as continuous improvement, what I do when I go into a new supplier is to say that the company's policy, my company's, or now I say my client's policy is that you will have a continuous improvement program. It starts from day one, that we expect you to continually implement systems that will help to improve your quality, improve your on-time delivery of goods and services, and to reduce your cost. And there's a danger of waiting. I find that some companies say, well, let us get started. We really can't do any continuous improvement. We have to spend all our efforts getting started. We'll do it later on. We'll do it 6 months down the road. 6 months come, and then there's another excuse, well, we're doing this. We're bringing in this new technology, and it gets pushed back 3 months. And I find if it doesn't get started right away, it's difficult down the road, even years later, to get it going. So what I recommend is indicating that that's part of the normal routine, that we're going to improve everything, all our systems continuously, and that's what is going to be required if you want to do business with us. You want to create a culture, a routine expectation that there's going to be improvement, and get that embedded in the organization, a culture of continuous and constant improvement. And again, what I recommend is a planned and phased approach where you introduce tools as needed and then introduce tools and apply them immediately, rather than train people in everything all at once, like giving an organization that's really not ready for Six Sigma training everybody and ask them to implement it may not be the best cases in a lot of organizations. And what I've done in the past is just give them tools over a 2-year period. Every few months, introduce another tool of Six Sigma, and then get them to apply it and see the benefit, and then give them something else. Because what you don't want to do is train somebody on a particular tool and then a year and a half later ask them to apply it, and I find that you only have to retrain them again. So you're better off having concurrent training with the application. Slowing the revolving door, a big issue. It was an issue a little over a year ago, all during the year from the late 1990s all the way up to when this big world recession hit, where companies were spending a lot of time developing, training individuals, and then another company sets up shop down the street, finds that your company has individuals that were developed and trained by Western companies, and they hire them away from you, and it's almost impossible to keep these people and to pay the higher salaries, because your whole salary structure goes out of line. And even it's a problem in China. It was a problem in Latin America. It's becoming a problem again in certain areas. Latin America is getting busy. It's a problem in the Philippines and in India. And in fact, in the Indian IT industry, prior to this last economic downturn, IT companies were reporting that their turnover rate was around 80%. In other words, 4 out of 5 individuals a year later would not be working at that company. And in fact, I've done some work in India, and when I had to do it with in the IT field, what I used to do is back up people 3 deep, where they would be a lead person, another person to follow that person, and then another new person coming on for each particular task, because we knew that the lead person would be gone within 6 months to a year, and we always have to have people behind that person to keep the project going. That was the only way to keep it going. And this turnover situation, as the world economy turns around, it's going to happen again. So you really need to worry about, after you develop these people, losing them. It's also important to have some local management there. I really recommend that the quality manager and the managing director are local individuals. In most cases, that's your smartest approach. You can send other people as technical assistants there, but the local local individuals know best how to motivate and retain the individuals that you spend so much time and effort and money on developing. Another thing in third world countries, social events that people can bring their families, that's sponsored and paid for by the company, very, very inexpensive, but that goes over a long way to keep individuals. It's much more important to workers in third world countries than it is in our culture. Training, again, I mentioned training and the ability to get trained in the Western world, and working on individuals with their career and life planning to make sure that they, especially the professionals, that their professional development needs are being met, and that's anywhere in the world. That's not only in the low-cost regions. It's all over. Okay, when problems occur, again, my recommendation is, don't do the pound of cure, do the ounce of prevention. Prevention is very, very important. To sum things up, status reports, make sure you know what's happening, that reports are given constantly, that you call in for no other reason, just to find out what's happening, and by asking very specific questions. Your time on the ground that I mentioned, working on relationship building. The better relationship you have with the individual, the more comfortable the individual will be to honestly report problems and let you know of situations before they become a crisis, because especially if you're dealing with Asia, you're talking, if there's a problem today, you get on a plane tomorrow, it's 2 days before you even get there and get on the ground. So it's you just can't get there overnight like you can in this hemisphere. Positive reinforcement, again, letting them know when they do report issues and do discuss problems with you. There's an initial reluctance, but when that starts to happen, to reinforce that behavior. I mentioned again about receiving communication, and also telling them that bad news is okay and good. I want to know about it. Please tell me. And I tell people that. I almost, laugh at them when I talk to Chinese or people in other areas. I say, don't be Chinese. Please tell me. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to tell me. You're allowed to disagree with me. Please do it. And please let me know immediately if you have any problem. And sometimes I even get very dramatic. I get on my knees and actually plead with them, and they normally laugh. But hopefully that leaves a good impression in them. Reinforcing the behavior, again, a positive reaction. Show gratitude. Don't get all upset at them and lose your temper. That's one of the worst things you can do, especially in these cultures. It's not good in any culture, but it can be disastrous in both in regions of Asia and Latin America. And it's also important to work with them on an advanced risk reaction plan. In other words, identify potential problems, and you can use a modified approach by using FMEA, failure modes and effects analysis, by listing all the possible things that could go wrong and putting together a plan on what's going to happen if this situation happens. And you work with them when you're on site, develop the plan, and then people know exactly what to do. And part of the plan is to notify you, one of step one in it. And that really works well, because then sometimes you can get a solution implemented immediately and not wait 3 or 4 days before you get everybody involved and get everybody on a particular conference call and decide what to do. In the meantime, 3 or 4 days go by with production or the production of a product and or a service is actually stopped. So that's one of the very, very important things that I recommend you do. And then again, once you do know of a problem, joint problem solving, helping them. I've had situations where one company did tell me that they couldn't get a particular plastic resin, and they were supplying items to the automotive industry, one of the big three, and I already called my client, got them involved. we got hooked up with the purchasing department of one of the big three automotive manufacturers, and they use their influence with this particular supplier to get them raw material much, much quicker. And again, if they didn't say anything, they just waited for it, we would have late deliveries, but we were able to maintain the schedule and not have to use another substitute material, which could have caused quality problems because they did tell us it, and we were able to help them. So always be willing to help them. Okay, that finishes the instructional portion of this webinar. You will get tomorrow an email with instructions on how to download these slides, and also another recording of this particular webinar, and if you really need to call, my information is on there. Please contact me, and we will take care of answering any of your questions. And if you need this webinar to be given at your company, let us know. We're happy to do it either on-site or as a webinar. We'll work something out. Some of the next steps, if you want to get more information, one approach would be do some independent study, do some research. I can help you with that. Another one would be a live training course. We can do that. We have ways. On the next slide I'm going to show you. We have some packages where if you want to buy some consulting and some training, we're able to do it at a very reasonable cost. Another one would be a cross-functional workshop. Okay, and if you really want to do, you can combine these, and we can customize something just to fit your organization very, very nicely. Some of the packages we do have is if you're interested in a 4-hour internet workshop with your company, we can do that for $397 per person. We also have another package where there's phone consultant, where you can get 4 hours of my time one-on-one, helping you through any particular issues you have. And if you want both the workshop and the consulting, there is a package deal that you see there for $897 if you need some additional help. I also have some white papers that I've written about outsourcing and one particular article. And if you go to this website, you can download them free. That's also available to you. Okay, I'd like to thank you for your time that you spent with me on this webinar. And let me just check the time. We have about 4 minutes left for questions. Karen, if you can unmute people, and I'll do my best to answer questions. Karen, are you there? Okay, I see people.
I am, Mark. I am.
Looks like some people are getting.
Everyone.
Okay. Okay. If there's any questions, please don't hesitate.
Folks, you can also use your raise your hand function there if you'd like Mark to call on you directly. It's on the little handle of your control panel, and Mark, see your hand go up. Let's see.
We've got
Iolana
most people.
Snyder.
Hello?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hello, Mark. This is Ioana. Mark, I have a specific question which I did not see addressed, and I realize this is a relatively high-level presentation, but I'm interested in your take on logistical issues, especially with the Far East. What is the magnitude of this in the grand scheme of things? And I'm talking about specifically shipping, customs. Is this an issue you have encountered that plays a major role, or is that fairly smooth by now?
Yeah, I've encountered issues. You know, most of the issues that I've encountered is getting raw materials, getting equipment, getting tooling into countries. Okay, that has been where I had more issues. It just is slow. Sometimes the customs people are looking for other considerations to get things through customs. And you know, what I've done there is usually the local organization is best able to handle that. Otherwise, if you don't have somebody on the ground to handle problems with getting equipment into the country, is hiring an actual service that does that for you, that can bring it through and get them through customs, getting an agent. As far as shipping stuff out, if you, most of the time, you can have the individual company work with a logistics agency to move the stuff out. Otherwise, you know, there's some big ones in the U.S., and I find that there's very few problems that I've seen getting things out of countries, okay, and getting them in the U.S., provided all the paperwork is done right. That's why it's good to have a third-party logistics organization help you with that. If you do it yourself, it becomes a problem unless you have somebody that really understands how to do that. And not all organizations are big enough to have a customs or a logistics or person available. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, I can probably handle another one. Who has a question?
I don't see any hands raised at the moment. Chime right in if anybody's got something they'd like to talk to Mark about.
No? Okay, I hope it was useful. Again, you have my personal information up here. I'll leave this up for another minute or two. And I'd like to thank you again for your attention. I hope it helped you with your future endeavors, and I wish everybody luck. And again, we're here to help if you need it. Thank you so much.